Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Scotland has become the first country in the world to introduce minimum pricing for alcohol. From today, retailers must ensure a unit of alcohol is not priced below 50p.
The policy, which was delayed by 6 years of legal challenges, is designed to reduce alcohol-related deaths, and there are now calls for England to implement a similar policy. Sky's Dan Whitehead reports.
A lot about liver disease, of which the vast majority is due to alcohol.
Scotland's First Minister joining doctors on the front line of the country's battle with alcohol. It's a problem which kills 22 people here every single week.
We've got the new minimum pricing for alcohol.
Yeah, I was talking to Andy.
From today, Scotland becomes the first country in the world to introduce minimum pricing for booze, in a hope it'll cut down on deaths and the £3 billion it spends on trying to tackle the issue every year.
Over the first 5 years of this policy, the estimate is that several hundred fewer deaths from alcohol will be recorded, and we will reduce admissions to hospital. And again, these are statistics, but every single one of these statistics is a human being with a family, with friends, with a life. And if we can save those lives, then this is a policy that is definitely worth pursuing.
Scotland has the highest rate of alcohol-specific deaths in the UK. In 2016, the number of male deaths per 100,000 stood at 30.9. In Northern Ireland, it was 22.2, while in England and Wales combined, it was 14.6 deaths, less than half the rate in Scotland. So from today, every unit of alcohol sold in Scotland will have a minimum price of 50p.
In real terms, then, what does this mean for the price of booze in Scotland? Well, from today, a standard 13% bottle of wine cannot be sold for less than £4.88. When it comes to spirits, vodka and gin, well, a 70 centilitre bottle will set you back a minimum of £13.13. But the real difference will be seen in cheap cider and beer. Yesterday, this 2-litre 5% bottle of cider was available for just £2.05. Today, in Scotland, you won't get your hands on it for less than a fiver.
Those who've suffered alcohol-related illnesses think the scheme will work.
People haven't got the money to be able to buy that amount of drink every week. I think that it'll cut people down, definitely. I mean, my experience is the only time I would stop is through consequences or not having any money left.
The Home Office is keeping a keen eye on what impact Scotland's minimum pricing has. But campaigners say England needs to follow suit sooner.
We think there's enough evidence actually right now for the government to bring it in England. It's being brought in Wales. We know that the plans are afoot in Northern Ireland, and it's already happening, as we know, in Scotland. So England looks like an outlier.
The new law impacts on the very cheapest alcohol most. Doctors and politicians will be watching to see whether changes in the supermarket aisles are enough to save lives. Dan Whitehead, Sky News.
Well, the Office for National Statistics has published new figures this morning on adult drinking habits in the UK. It shows that professionals aged 45 and over are consuming the most.
Well, 57% of adults surveyed had drunk alcohol during that week. That equates to almost 30 million people.
The survey shows the highest consumption was among those aged 45 to 64 years, with 64.6% saying they drank alcohol.
While the lowest level was among those aged 16 to 24 years, at almost 50%.
When it comes to socioeconomic status, almost 70% of people who work in managerial and professional occupations regularly drink alcohol.
While just over 50% of those in manual occupations said they drank.
And the proportion of adults who claimed to be teetotal was just over 20%. So that equates to approximately 10.4 million.
So would minimum pricing work across the country? Joining us to discuss this from our Central London studio, Christopher Snowdon, Head of Lifestyle Economics at the Institute of Economic Affairs, and the author and writer Darren McGarvey is in Glasgow. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Darren, if I can start with you, lots of stats around today, but in terms of alcohol consumption in Scotland, how big is the issue?
The issue's massive. Alcoholism underscores
many of the social problems that we face in the UK and in Scotland, whether it be poor health, mental problems, whether it be childhood adversity or violence in our communities of all kinds. And while I recognise that minimum pricing is not a panacea for all of these problems, we also have to understand that while it might not stop people drinking, where it even has a moderate impact on alcohol consumption and we see people drinking less, at the level of the individual and the level of the society, the cumulative effect of even a moderate reduction in alcohol consumption is just too big. And so this is a policy that I support, and I think the Scottish Government's done the right thing, considering that they had to face down a powerful drinks lobby in order to get it through Parliament.
OK, Christopher, over to you. So Darren highlighting that it's not the silver bullet, but he is broadly in support of it, thinks it will do some good. What do you think?
Well, we've been told that it is something approaching a silver bullet for the last 6 or 7 years. We've been told it's going to have a dramatic effect on all sorts of outcomes, from alcohol-related disease to drink driving and crime. So now we can see. I'm rather looking forward to see what actually happens. We've got a natural experiment between England and Scotland. I personally very much doubt it will have any measurable effect on these outcomes, for the simple reason that people who are very heavy or dependent drinkers do not change their consumption pattern much, just because the price of alcohol goes up.
OK, let me ask you about that, Darren. The concern that people who are heavy drinkers, who have alcohol problems, this isn't actually going to affect them, which is, I presume, the overall goal of the policy.
Yes, well, I mean, the jury's out on that. Speaking as a recovered alcoholic, I can certainly attest that the cost of alcohol, whether that be the financial cost and burden, or whether that be the physical and mental cost of it, was definitely a contributing factor to my decision to recognise that I had a problem and that something in my life had to change. Now, like I say, there are many other factors that contribute to the demand for alcohol, whether that be stress in a lot of deprived communities due to social inequalities, or whether that be the ubiquity of alcohol advertising as a sort of as a cool thing to do. And this isn't just about people who have really extreme alcohol problems. This is about the sort of culture that we want to bring our children into. And it's just simply undeniable that in a whole range of other areas, whether it be road safety, whether it be drink driving, whether it be smoking, the government interventions that are pitched at the right sort of gradient have had an impact on not just the public mind, but also behaviour around these issues that I think warrants minimum pricing being brought in, and I'm glad to see that Christopher remains open-minded about it.
Yeah, Christopher, a lot of what Darren's saying there, some people would say is nanny statism. Where do you sit on that?
Of course it's nanny statism. It's incredibly patronising to the people of Scotland, who are going to know that everybody south of the border is getting alcohol at a more reasonable price. And incidentally, I think a lot of people will be crossing the border to England to take advantage of that. But let's get rid of this myth that alcohol is dirt cheap. In the United Kingdom, it really isn't. Go to almost anywhere else in continental Europe and you will get much, much cheaper alcohol, and they don't have the same kind of rates of alcohol-related death as Scotland is. You've already shown in your item that the rate of alcohol-related death in Scotland is twice that of England already. Why is that? This is clearly nothing to do with price. It's all sorts of complex and difficult social and economic problems that people face. The SNP is not addressing those problems with this. It's just bringing in a rather elitist policy, which is highly regressive. It's going to clobber people on low incomes, but actually it's going to clobber people on most incomes. It's just going to exempt the rich. It is going to cost people in Scotland every year tens of millions of pounds for what I think are very uncertain and probably non-existent benefits.
Darren, elitist snobs talking down to people on low incomes?
I think it's really quite interesting that right-wing think tanks suddenly reveal themselves as having an interest in the impact on the poor when it comes to an issue like minimum pricing, but are always coming up missing when it comes to all the social inequalities that drive alcohol consumption in these very communities. So while I do respect that this isn't the only solution to the problem, and I also concede that it's far more complex than putting 50p on a minimum price for a unit of alcohol, at the same time, I feel that this sends the correct message, not just to people who are raising children in this culture, but also to think tanks and drinks lobbies who so far have been setting the agenda on this issue that we have to draw a line somewhere and say that it's just unacceptable. And so, again, I fully support this and I look forward to seeing what the results will be in the years to come.
Want to let Christopher respond to that red wine think tank, suddenly getting involved when you want to do so?
Well, we're an economic think tank. You know, we're not a social affairs think tank. And I can tell you from an economic point of view that this is not only highly regressive, not only will clobber the poor, but also doesn't have any compensating benefits. At least when you tax alcohol, and we pay in the United Kingdom 40% of all the alcohol duty in the European Union, at least there is a compensating benefit. It's a transfer of wealth. The government can then spend it on something hopefully useful. With minimum pricing, you had this deadweight loss whereby the drinks industry actually make a bit of money. The retailers will be making a lot of money this week as they clear their old stock out, and there's no compensating benefit. People just have to buy more expensive beer and cider and wine than they otherwise would prefer to. The government gets nothing in return.
OK, just want to finally ask you, because you were nodding your head when he was talking about a tax rather than minimum unit pricing, Darren, something that you think will work well alongside this?
Yes, I agree with that, and I would like to see minimum pricing go further to retrieve some of the money in order to divert it to relevant services. But I do think that the argument that there's no compensating benefit is quite short-sighted, because in homes where alcoholism is an issue, even if it's not full-blown, then a moderate reduction in drinking can have a long-term impact, not only on the quality of life of young children, but also at the level of the society. We'll have less people presenting at casualty with all sorts of problems, whether it be incidents going on in the home or whether it be injuries that have happened as a result of being a bit too intoxicated. So while I know that there's not a direct financial benefit in relation to the minimum price, I think that there is a cost benefit for society generally.
OK, Darren McGarvey, Christopher Snowdon, thank you very much for both coming on to talk with us. Appreciate it.
From today, you will pay a lot more for many alcoholic drinks in Scotland than you will in the rest of the UK. The Scottish Government has become the first country in the world to introduce a minimum price for alcohol to try to stop excessive drinking. The cost of some of the cheapest drinks has now tripled. Critics say the move will hit people on low incomes disproportionately.
All of the evidence says that while it's not going to solve the problem on its own, without action that targets the affordability of alcohol, then we won't make the progress we need to see.
It started off about 4 cans of beer a day, and then that started to progress to crates of beer enough every day. Then it was a bottle of wine every night, and some beer, and then it was like maybe you could get 3 bottles for a tenner.
When alcohol prices rise, deaths from alcohol fall. And when alcohol prices fall, deaths from alcohol rise. Every time. So people may think they're not influenced by price, but they definitely are.
We have a lot of customers who are on a very, very low income, a very tight income, and they don't have a lot of money to spend, and maybe on a Friday or a Saturday they want a bottle of cheap cider because that's all they can afford, and I think it's quite unfair on them.
Scotland has become the first country in the world to introduce a minimum price for alcohol in a bid to cut the high number of deaths through problem drinking. From today, retailers and licensed premises must charge at least 50 pence per unit.
The price of some strong ciders and lagers will be most affected, and Scotland's First Minister says lives will be saved as a result. Well, in just a moment, we'll find out whether the rest of the UK could follow Scotland's lead. But first, Martin Geisler on the end of cheap booze.
Scotland has a notorious, destructive relationship with alcohol. It contributes to nearly 4,000 deaths here each year. But from today, cheap booze north of the border became a little bit harder to find.
You can drink the recommended weekly intake of alcohol for around £2.50. Now, there's something far from right about that. So if we can help reduce consumption through minimum pricing, as all of the evidence says we will, then we'll start to make a difference.
Today's price rise means 2 litres of cider, which could be bought for as little as £1.99, will rise to a minimum of £5 in Scotland. A bottle of vodka will rise from less than £10 to at least £13.13, and 4 cans of lager can't be sold for less than £4.40 now. The Scottish Government says the policy will save around 400 lives over the next 5 years and mean 8,000 fewer alcohol-related hospital admissions. Most pubs and clubs won't be affected by the changes. They already charge more than 50p a unit. But you will feel the difference if you drink this kind of thing. Cheap, strong cider. Elsewhere in the UK, you can pick up this 3-litre bottle for as little as £3.65. But from today, Scottish retailers will have to charge you at least £11.25. Audrey is a recovering alcoholic. For years, she drank those strong, cheap drinks. If you're desperate, she says, the price won't stop you. But raising it can't do any harm. Would this have made any difference to you, this new law, the way you were drinking at the time?
To be honest, no. I would have found ways and means of getting alcohol, whether that was selling my stuff, whether that was borrowing money.
So if somebody's in the grip of alcoholism, this isn't necessarily going to stop them?
Not necessarily, but I think it might reduce their intake on a weekly basis.
This is just one step. Already there are calls for tougher laws to make alcohol less attractive and more expensive still.
We need to do a range of other things, including tackling availability and tackling marketing, and we need to give consumers information about what they're drinking. Labelling is, there's more information on a pint of milk than on a bottle of wine at the moment.
But Scotland's new measures are a world first, and other countries are watching. If alcohol's deadly grip here is loosened, they may follow suit. Martin Geisler, ITV News, Glasgow.
So the pressure is now on England, Wales and Northern Ireland to follow suit. And today, a timely new survey revealed the state of Britain's drinking habits. Figures show that England has the highest proportion of adults, nearly 60%, who had consumed alcohol in the past week. And that was more than Scotland and Wales. And it also found those who earn the most drink the most, suggesting that price may well be an issue. Growing numbers of women aged over 65 drink, whereas among the young, the number who are teetotal is actually increasing. Well, Sejal Karia is here with more on this. Some really quite surprising findings, aren't there?
Yes, it shows that professional workers such as lawyers, doctors and teachers are more likely to drink regularly than those on average incomes, and that's because they can afford to. But it also shows that you're most likely to be a heavy drinker if you're aged between 55 and 64, thereby posing a greater risk to your health. Whereas younger people seem to be moving away from a drinking lifestyle. A quarter say that they are teetotal, but those who do drink are more likely to binge.
OK, so what is the likelihood then of other parts of the UK actually joining and following Scotland's lead?
Wales are already on their way. A similar bill has already passed its first hurdle in the Welsh Assembly, and it's likely to come into force next year. Ministers in Northern Ireland were floating the idea, but then the government collapsed. But all of this is putting pressure on the Home Office in England, who say at the moment such plans are under review and that they're closely watching what happens and the impact in Scotland.
Fascinating stuff. Sejal, thank you very much indeed.
There'll be no more cheap booze in Scotland from today. It's just become the first country in the world to impose a minimum price for alcohol. Health campaigners have described it as the biggest public health breakthrough since the smoking ban. Our Scotland correspondent Kieran Jenkins reports.
On the road from Coatbridge to Airdrie, we're at the off licence run by Mo Khan and his family, for a busy Friday night. Not just any Friday, the last Friday of cheap shop-bought booze in Scotland.
Friday night? Yeah. What does that mean?
Oh, steaming actually. Steaming?
Steaming?
Aye.
Yeah, what have you tried?
So, babysitter, just going to go home, and chill, get a couple of drinks and hopefully get a long lie.
And not everyone knows yet that prices are going up.
How much do you get this for today? $3.50. So that's going to be a fiver.
Mo and his customers, some of them, are about to become unwitting participants in an unprecedented national experiment that the government says will save lives. In a world's first, alcohol will have a minimum price, 50p per unit. A 3-litre bottle of strong cider here will almost triple in price. A 1-litre bottle of vodka will cost less than £1 more, but a bottle of wine for a fiver will stay the same.
Now, this bottle of cider costs just £4, and there are more units of alcohol in here than it's recommended you drink in an entire week. And this is the end of the market that minimum pricing wants to affect. But it will only work if enough people who come in here to buy these and similar drinks cut down considerably, rather than simply moving on to drink something else.
What do you want? 2 dragon chips and apples, please.
Over the course of this Friday night, we meet people already prepared to pay more than the minimum.
Thank you.
What is this?
Dragon soup.
June is drinking a new breed of alcopop.
4 units. It's quite strong.
If you really like it, then you'll just pay for it.
Do you know what this is?
It's vodka, rum and orange juice.
And so is Sean.
It doesn't put you off that this is this strong?
Really? Huh?
No.
Yeah, but people like to unwind on the weekend. If they want to drink, let them drink. It's not up to them, but they want to put in their body or that.
These drinks are high in alcohol, but they're also high in price, and June and Sean are not the drinkers minimum pricing is targeting. Billy is. He's an alcoholic, and he's buying £1 cans of super strength cider.
Why do you buy this?
Because it's the cheapest.
That will soon double in price.
We'll get a drink for somewhere. We're alcoholics, we're not going to change. So we're going to find a drink, and if it means we need to pay £2 for a can instead of £1, we'll get it for somewhere.
Billy lives in one of Scotland's most deprived communities. Will he get better, or will he get poorer? A key question for minimum pricing is whether it unfairly penalises the worst off. We asked Nicola Sturgeon when she last spent under 50p per unit.
I tend to drink wine when I drink at all, and you know, the wine I will drink will tend, as will be the case for most moderate drinkers, will be above the 50p per unit level.
I just wonder if first of all you accept that lower income earners drink the same amount as middle and high income earners. There's no discrepancy there.
Well, you're talking in generalities here. Problem drinkers are the drinkers that will be most impacted by minimum pricing. This is a carefully thought out policy. It's one with evidence behind it, and most importantly, it's one that is going to reduce deaths from alcohol and reduce the damage that alcohol does.
Why do you drink, Billy?
I don't know. I really don't know. It's a habit. It's stuck in my system, and it's never going to go away. And I've got to the stage now where that's me.
What's it done to your life?
Wrecked it. It's absolutely wrecked it.
Today, the experiment begins. Will customers move online? Will they buy bootleg booze? Or will they change a habit of a lifetime? Either way, in Scotland's shops, the curtain has come down on super cheap booze. Kieran Jenkins, Channel 4 News, near Airdrie.
I've been getting